I met Quinn almost 20 years ago. I'd say it was 19 years ago. I was thinking about this earlier today. It was probably November or December of 2004. I was invited to a life group by a guy that I met at work. I didn't work with him, but through the course of my relationship with him, he was actually trying to hire me. And so the only reason I went to this life group was because I wanted to get to know him better in hopes that he might hire me. I remember going and feeling very uncomfortable. I didn't know anybody that was at the group at the time other than the individual that had invited me. And all I can remember thinking is, man, I'm just ready for this to be over and I'm not coming back. And we all sat around this big table. And I remember Quinn was asking if anybody had any prayer requests. Now, I've never seen this guy before in my life, didn't know who he was. So he starts praying for these individuals. I'm noticing he's getting ready to wind it up. And all of a sudden he starts praying for me, very specifically things that really nobody should have had any idea about in my life other than God. And he gets done praying, and man, I didn't know what to feel. And he just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, I want you to know that God hears your prayers and everything's going to be okay. Through the years, you know, he's just been a mentor to me. And after I got married, for a season I thought it was the biggest mistake that I had ever made. You know, and there was a lot of turmoil there, and the two becoming one.
One thing that's so interesting, like in you, Scott, is that I mentor a lot of men, and it's amazing how some of them take hold of what's really there available to them, and some of them don't. And you see so many of them who you pour into, or you do certain things and they just flounder. It's really a blessing to see where you remember where you were, and I remember those times where you were, and to see where you've come to.
So there was a season in my life where there was a guy that I'd worked with and did life with every day that knew and could see that I had a father wound. And so one day after lunch, we were actually driving back to the office, and he asked me a question, and he said, when you pray, who do you pray to? He said, there's no right or wrong answer. And so I just told him, I said, I pray to Jesus. And he said, well, have you ever thought about why you pray to Jesus? And I said, no. I was brewing on that question as why did he even ask me that question? But then I asked, well, why do I just pray to Jesus? And I just asked, probably the first time I was like, you know, Father, why do I pray to Jesus? And you know what he showed me was that I prayed to Jesus because I had a father wound. So moving forward, you know, and having Quinn as a spiritual father, you know, one thing that I can say is that he's always been there.
One thing I really like about our relationship, I enjoy probably more when you tell me about how things are going well. And I think probably all of us ought to look into the fact that our Heavenly Father is really pleased with a lot of things, and we ought to probably be asking Him things that we are, you know, how He's pleased with, instead of always thinking, okay, how did I go wrong today? Instead of asking Him, how did I go right today? You know, being an athletic director and coach, you can't even know how many dads would come to me saying, oh, we've lost control of Billy. We don't know what to do. You know, we've been trying to help him, but he won't listen to us. It's almost like the enemy automatically, especially it seems between a young man and a father, there's a division there that he won't listen to his father. I could talk to him and they'd understand. I could ask them simply, do you think your dad loves you? Yes. Do you think he's got the best interest for you? Yes. They could give me the right answers, but it's like this.
Sure.
You know, and that's what we deal with in the world. That's why a spiritual dad and a son is so important, and it's very difficult if we don't have someone that we can really talk to. You know, from a spiritual dad, I've learned just to pay attention and watch for those that I think the Lord has highlighted, that at a season, now for Scott and I, it's been 20 years, but sometimes it may only be a season when somebody's really desperate for some sort of acceptance. The deal between the spiritual side of it, where you're really needing to know, what should I do? How should I do it? Am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? And trusting somebody enough with that is a real key thing, especially for a man. we have this performance-driven thing that we want to do it right. We don't want to mess it up. When we have somebody in our life that we trust that tells us, hey, you're doing a good job, I love what you're doing, I love how you're doing it, that person begins to operate instead of 50%, they're operating it up at 10%. All of a sudden the kingdom can advance so much faster than where we're just letting our own self try to find our way.